Hey, evening all. No, I have not forgotten about you. We are here for Chapter 6 of Wayne Jacobsen's He Loves Me. This is actually the second take on this video. We're having some technical difficulties. I know, it's been a day. It's been a day, just saying. But, without further ado, we will get on with Chapter 6 and take it from there. And Chapter 6 is entitled The Tyranny of the Favor Line. Now, as per normal, it begins with a little quote here, and the quote is listed as being from the observation of a 15-year-old summing up an evening with her youth group. And it says, God is good, you are bad, try harder. Well, that's encouraging. Anyways, the author begins, and he's telling the story about a young couple that he knew, a woman and a man, and they had in their 30s, and their son was diagnosed, 6-year-old son was diagnosed with this critical disease, and he doesn't list what it is, just that it's, they're kind of waiting for the door to close, kind of a thing. And the stress of it all on the family has been insane, and eventually the husband ends up leaving, and the mother is left alone with the child. And she's absolutely overwhelmed. And she feels like God has abandoned her or turned on her or whatever it is that he wants from her, she's not capable of bringing to the table. And I'll read here what he says here. I did offer to help her with whatever resources we had to get her through the days ahead, but she declined. I just can't keep living this way. Rarely in my life have I felt as inadequate as I did in the moment when I placed that phone back in its cradle. For those of you who've never seen a landline, that's what that's called, is hanging up the phone. Okay, I know, dated it a bit. After nearly 15 years of pastoral ministry, I didn't have the answers she needed. Only later was I to learn why. At the time, I was caught in the same trap that she was, but only on the other side of it. She thought her overwhelming need pointed to her faithlessness in God and the loss of favor with him, while I had thought my more pleasant circumstances were proof that I had been faithful and had thus earned his favor. We were both living under the tyranny of the favor line. She was already paying for it, and I was about to. Anyways, it goes on to define what the favor line is. And what he writes here is that it's the invisible line that tells us whether or not we've met enough of someone's expectations to merit approval. And that it's impossible to live in this world without recognizing the favor line's impact on every area of life. He mentions the fact that our parents had one. We knew what to do to make them proud and what to make them not so proud of us. In school, we were measured by our performance, although it was, kind of formal with grades. With friends, we discovered that, if we kind of went the wrong way or disappointed them somehow, they turn on us just the same way as we turn on them, So we learn to survive in this world by currying favor where we need it. So it's only natural to assume that God has a favor line as well. As long as things are pleasant and going well, or even bearable for that matter, we don't think much about God's favor. But let things go south, lose a job, loss of a relationship, life-threatening disease, in those moments we really question how God feels. Does he love me? Have I offended him? Am I doing enough for him? And struggling with those questions brings us right back to the favor line as we look for some way to get back on God's good side. Now, I'm doing this with the phone, so it's going to be a little jerkier maybe than normal, but we'll get around to it, okay? Anyways, he goes on and he uses King David in his examples here. And one of the ones he lists off is Psalm 15, 1-3. Which says, Lord, who may dwell in your sanctuary? Who may live in your holy hill? He whose walk is blameless, and who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from his heart and has no slander on his tongue. And he continues that list. Man, there's other lists in Scripture, things like the Ten Commandments and the Great Commission, fruits of the Spirit, and so on and so forth. And if we go down through those, we realize very quickly that if this is what it takes to get in God's favor, to be in his presence, none of us, not one of us, would ever get there. Like, we don't stand a chance, you know. A little later on, he points to David's falling with, whether you know the story or not, we'll relay it here. He committed adultery with his friend's wife. She got pregnant, and in order to hide the pregnancy, he killed him. Just saying. So, kind of disqualifies King David pretty fast right there on those lists, you know. But we'll get to that later on. But it's just to put a little perspective in this for you. The author mentions that all over the world that he has asked audiences the question, how many of you think that you pray enough, read the Bible enough, or witness enough? And he mentions that he has never once gotten somebody to raise their hand. That's a bit telltale, you know. And he mentions that he knows what they're thinking because he questions how much is enough. You know, if I pray an hour, should I do 2? If I read 2 chapters, should I read 4? Should I witness like once a month, once a week, once a day? You know, whatever. Like, what's enough? You know? And he goes on to say that, you know, in our genuine moments, we know we're not entirely free from sin. Okay, we may be forgiven, there may be a pardon granted to us, but as far as being free from its influence, no, we're not. And, you know, we are at heart kind of selfish and whatnot. Our motives and whatnot are not always good, you know. But we do tend to wonder sometimes how many of our failures that God is willing to overlook, you know, as we start to mature. And that's why he calls it the tyranny of the favor line. Because trying to live under the weight of, you know, whether it's David's list of things or something else scriptural or anyone else's list is impossible. The only way to feel good about it is when you think you're doing better than someone else is. And that's self-righteousness, and that's not good either. You know, like it's not a win-win. There's no win-win here. You know, I mean, we joke about it once in a while about things going south, you know, that we've lost favor with God somehow. But the truth of it is, I mean, when we're facing great loss, we're left to kind of go through and pick through our circumstances, and we're left kind of like how we started the book with that daisy chain, you know, Christianity. He loves me not. He loves me not. And that's what we're left with. You know, so... But anyways, he continues on. He mentions to David here, you know, goes back into Psalms 143:2. Do not bring your servant into judgment, for no one living is righteous before you. He was aware of his own weakness, and he wasn't willing to stake God's favor on his own performance. And then he mentions again with the whole, you know, adultery, murder thing, you know, that, you know, he goes on in Psalm 51:17 and says, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. I mean, David had a handle on this. He knew he was, you know, he's not stupid. I mean, he knew what he did was wrong, and I mean, he knew who he was, and he knew in his own weakness, in his own failings, he wasn't qualified to stand in front of God. But if you're going to live by that favor line, that's where you go, right? You know, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I earn his favor. But, oh, this is going wrong, that's going wrong, I must be out of his favor. But the funny thing is, God's favor isn't a wage for you to earn. Okay? You don't earn it, it's a gift. It's a free gift, it's given to you. You know, remember our story of the prodigal son. We go back to that again. There were 2 brothers, right? One guy sure as heck knew he didn't earn it. The other guy thought he did, and they were both wrong. It was given, God's love, the Father's love was given to both right from the get-go. They always had it, they just didn't realize it. You know, so He goes. The author here mentions that trying to live in service to the favor line will at some point leave you stranded in hopelessness. You'll either end up in a place of despair or self-righteousness. There's just no way around it. Now, and continuing on, he goes in and he talks about Paul, the Apostle Paul, who was formerly known as Saul, who was the Pharisee of Pharisees. He was a protege. And to be a good Pharisee required you to be quite self-righteous, quite full of yourself. It was necessary to be the religious elite. You had to be, if you think about what he was. And he wasn't just that, but he was persecuting the early church. And when I say persecuting, I'm not saying he was writing nasty comments on Facebook. He was taking people out in the street and killing them. That kind of persecution. If you weren't aware of that, that's what this dude was doing. And on the road to Damascus, he runs into, Jesus shows up. Bodily form, boom, flash of light, and here he is standing from him. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And in this instant, in all honesty, Paul, then Saul, would have realized who it is. And he recognized who it is. And, he said, who are you? And he said, this is Jesus whom you're persecuting. You think about this in the moment. He figures he's a dead man. He's about to get annihilated. But he didn't. Instead, he found out that he was loved right from the get-go, even though he didn't earn it. Not to the point, even not even earning it. The fact he didn't even know who Jesus was. He didn't even recognize God when he met him. He was so blind to everything else and what he had earned and thought he deserved, he didn't even realize who God was when he was face-to-face with him. And even in spite of that, even with that, God still loved him. Enough that, he gave him more than a chance, Paul went on to do incredible things in life, But, at any rate, continuing on. The author says, it may sound impossible, especially if you've hoped for this in the past, and like that young mother at the beginning, you've only been disappointed. But all you knew was to try even harder to be good enough to win his affection. But such thinking will never lead you closer to him. Instead of teaching you to love him, it will only leave you angry and frustrated that you cannot do enough, or that he isn't being fair with you. And he wants to break that cycle the only way he can, by making his favor a gift instead of something you earn. It's not a wage. You don't earn his favor. It's a gift. God's gift to you, his favor is a gift to you. It's not something you earned. That's why you can't, there's no place to brag in here or to think you're better than someone else. We're talking grace all the way. Okay. Anyways, this is the end of chapter 6, and we've, as per norm, we have a little question here we'll throw in, and then we'll go back to trying to upload this. Should be fun. Yay! Pull this away a little bit here. I pull it away farther, but for those of you who don't know, I do have a tremor in my hands. I've had my whole life, and the farther I pull this away, the more it's going to shake. It's going to get a little hectic if I pull the phone any farther away, so you have to, put up with being able to count my mustache hairs. Sorry about that, but it happens. Anyway, moving on. Have events in your past left you disappointed with God's love for you or overwhelmed you with your own failures? If so, find some time alone with God to go over those moments with him, and ask him to show you how thinking you had to earn his favor might have distorted your perspective of what was really going on. I think that's probably something important to do, because I think we all do that. And I know I do. There have been a lot of times where I've tried things and tried to do things, and the motives were way off, But I'm kind of at the point now where I don't question my motives as much, I just kind of do what I feel I'm supposed to do, and, I know I'm not earning anything, because if I can earn it, then I can lose it, right? And trust me, I'd lose it fast. Just saying. I know the thoughts that trust me, I know the thoughts going through up here. Just saying. Anyways, thus ends chapter 6. And as I say, we are all in this together. So you take care and peace out. And we will see you again, hopefully. God willing. All right.